Ladies and gentlemen, nerds, welcome to the Daily Quest number 4. Today is, oh my goodness, what is the date? February 24th, 2015. And like I said, this is the Daily Quest number 4. But before we get to today's episode, holy crap, what a weekend. The Kings of the Storm weekly number 11 was an 11-hour tournament. Well, 10 and a half, I guess. But let me tell you, as somebody who's new to casting and kind of just getting into the whole casting thing, I didn't do it for prior games. Doing a stream like that with lots of intense games, you know, just back to back to back. We had one 25-minute break because of a series just kind of going too long. It took a toll on Kubi and myself. We were both just completely dead. We went out to McDonald's. Through the snow, we actually have the most snow in the entire country right now. We drove to McDonald's in terrible conditions, and I got the new triple cheeseburger at McDonald's. Now I'm trying to diet, but after an event like that, I was just like, I have to have this triple cheeseburger. I regretted it terribly. It was a horrendous decision, and that was my weekend. And I hope you all had a great weekend. But today, we're talking about the Lost Vikings, and the Lost Vikings are the newest addition to Heroes of the Storm. Well, they've been out for about 3 weeks now, and, well, at this point in time, we haven't really seen them a lot in competitive until this past weekend. Now, actually, the first game of the weekend, Vikings popped up, and we finally got to see them in competitive play. So we're going to look at that in a little bit, but first, we're going to talk more about the Vikings just in general as a hero. So let's find them here in the shop.
Hail, mighty keyboard warrior.
They're interesting, and they're going to be loud, and we're probably going to want to lower the volume on, what is that? Voices volume, announcer volume. Yeah, let's just tune that down a bit, because they're just going to keep babbling. So the Lost Vikings are the first hero in Heroes of the Storm that introduced multiple control groups. You guys should know this, blah, 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 blah. Here's the interesting thing. The three of them, like I said, in unique control groups, they don't have any abilities. They start out with just flat out no abilities, period, and you have to end up talenting into them. And based on what I've done through all my trials playing them both, I actually tried them unranked, believe it or not. I played them unranked, and we've seen them in the one competitive match. And I've played a fair number of games. I'm level 7, so I don't know how many games that is exactly, but I've played a fair number of games with them. So let's just kind of run through the Vikings. Well, they've got Olaf. He's a tank. He's got more health. He's a big sluggy dude, and he has a bit of a dash. And you can actually talent a bit of a stun onto that dash. Then you've got Balog. He's your lane clear. He throws swords, and his swords actually do splash damage after they hit, so he's good for the lane clear. And last but not least, you got Eric, who's kind of like a scout. He's got additional movement speed. He's got the long range, and you can even talent a bit of a knockback onto that. And last but not least, their death time is lower than your average hero. So they've got this fast restart. That's their trait. So you have less penalty on them, since it's kind of hard to control 3 of them at once when they die. Of course, when they die, they do reward a quarter of a level worth of experience because they're not a full hero. So collectively, if they all die, it's about a normal hero's death. Play again. This is actually a heroic I've never done. All Vikings are revived and teleported to a summoning Viking. So you can just resummon your Vikings. I've actually never even tried this. Haven't touched it because of how good the boat is. The longboat raid. Summon a longboat and go on a Viking raid. Well, it's cute, but it's really powerful. It hits hard. It just auto attacks around you. It'll fire targets it can reach within decent range. It's got good priority. It has a Q that you can shoot out. It has a lot of lag. It's more lag than an Arcane Flare. It's kind of like an Asmodean Globe. And that'll hit and slow. And we can actually just kind of hop into the game and look at that in a little bit. Now, looking at their skins, they're wonderful. The pajama skin is, of course, my go-to. But looking at the talents, that's kind of where everything gets interesting. Now, again, this is a hero that hasn't really been tried out all that much, like in the scene. We've seen one game competitive with them, and we'll get there. But what we see here, and what I've gone with up to this point, is a Viking Horde. Viking Horde. Okay, I need to turn their voices just off because that's just terrible. Get out. Viking Horde. Each Viking gains 1 health per second. This bonus increases by 0.5 on all Vikings when a Restoration Globe is picked up. So this is a tuned regen master that works for Lost Vikings. Considering their health pools are considerably lower than other heroes, this seems to be like the go-to. Spy games is something you can use if you literally want to make Eric like a soak. So in theory, if you want to just throw him in the top lane and leave him in the bush to soak that lane, it's cute and it's cool, but I feel like you're giving up too much by grabbing that. And there's Olaf the Stout. He gets a block. So that's a block onto one of the Viking and makes him more tanky. That might be worth playing with more, but up to this point in time, it seems like Viking Horde's the go-to. And here's kind of like the inherent problem that I'm seeing with Vikings and in their viability. Since they don't have abilities, but their abilities are so crucial, you end up speccing into them. So level 4, you're going to grab, spin to win. Level 7, you're going to grab jump. 10, again, we're talking about longbow here because it's so good. 13, impatience and virtue is very good, but also the Hunka burning Olaf seems to be a pretty solid talent pickup as well, because that's just the burning fire around Olaf every 15 seconds, or every second you do 15 damage, excuse me. And Norse Force at 60, of course, that's their E, and 20, you just upgrade the Ragnarok and roll. Let's go back to level 4. All right, let's look at these. Balog's basic attacks deal splash damage and heal for 20% of the damage dealt. That's pretty cool, but this is kind of reliant on you soaking. This is something that's really only going to heal you in the soak scenarios. Their health pool is so low that you'll end up grabbing Viking Horde, and that will effectively deal that. So we're not really ever going to grab that. The Demolitionist, essentially, yeah, I don't know. I don't grab Demolitionists in any heroes because the ammo regen is so slow, so I don't really see the value in these kind of talents. Probably not worth grabbing. And then Hard-Headed Redhead. Eric gains a melee attack that knocks the enemy away. This effect has a 6-second cooldown. So this makes him into, in theory, this kiting hero. But how often is this actually going to come to use? Well, that's something we can discuss, because there's 2 ways you can really look at the Lost Vikings. You can look at the Lost Vikings as 1 hero, or you can look at them as 3 heroes. So if you start to think about something like this, that gives you a knockback, and then you pair that with some of the other talents that you can get, I mean, you're giving up spin to win for this, so you're giving up a lot of burst damage. This is strictly utility. And then you start to pair it with, where is it, 16? Large and in charge, that's a stun. You start pairing all this stuff, suddenly you have a knockback, suddenly you have a stun. Maybe that's cool. But again, you have to give up so much to make that happen. And I don't think that's something we're going to see just yet. Now, that's something I want to encourage everyone to try. I want people to play around with these kind of things. Like, get that melee knockback. As long as Eric is moving, he heals. That's cool. That makes him this crazy good, scout at some point. But it's still something I'm not sold on the fact yet. Like, it's a cool idea, makes them more utility, but it ruins their survivability because they absolutely need stuff like jump, and they absolutely need the Norse Force. But the build we're going to look at today, the build in this video, is going to be Viking Horde. It's going to be the spin to win, the jump. I mean, just the standard stuff. Longboat raid. He actually grabbed the Hunka burning Olaf. I still think impatience is virtue is very cool, because this is battle momentum. Enemies damaged by Vikings basic attacks reduce the cooldown of all Viking abilities by 0.25 seconds. So you have 3 Vikings. Eric attacks incredibly fast. This is something that scales very quickly. So the build we see uses this, but I really like impatience virtue because the longbow is what does so much damage. And 16, we're going to see Norse Force. And last but not least, 20, Ragnarok and roll is the go-to. So Vikings, very, very new. And before we get to our replay, let's just kind of look at all these things and look at the effectiveness and why that other style could be used. So just jumping on into try mode, and the game seems a bit loud. If you guys ever want to test anything at all, try mode's the way to do it. We've actually kind of given, we've kind of been pinging Blizzard a little bit about the idea of adding things like merc camps to try mode. Like if there's like one golem, one pack of bruisers, and one pack of giants on the map, it'd be really fun to be able to test. Like, okay, can I practice soloing, bruisers here? That kind of stuff could be really fun. But we're just gonna spam this level up button to get to level 16 to really see what makes Vikings interesting. All right, so number one, Viking Horde. That's not really fun to show. Let's just look at spy game. So now Eric has a cloak, and you can grab Eric by pressing 3, or you can just select him like this. That's how Vikings work. And suddenly, takes a few seconds. Come on, buddy. Yeah, suddenly he's stealth. So that's of course only. It's like Shadow Meld. You cannot move. If you ever played World of Warcraft, that Shadow Meld can't move, but he has his purpose. Spin to win is the go-to we're going to see in this game. Then we're going to have jump, longboat raid. We're going to try impatience is virtue, and then Norse force. So this is what we're typically going to see. We'll toggle the minions, and they will slowly make their way down. Now, the spin to win is a huge amount of burst damage. You get in the middle, and it does a lot. Now, it's got a 12-second cooldown. That's a good amount of time. If you just clear the cooldown, you can see if they're all there, it does a lot of damage. But again, long cooldown. But if you manage to use the 3 Vikings to body block an enemy into a corner, you can actually just completely corner someone, get them in the middle there, and then you just hit Q. It will really burn them down. And as if you just, maximize all your auto attack damage while your allies are doing some damage there. You have the Hoarder at level 1, the Viking Horde, so you have the additional regen, which does stack very quickly. And you're going to do a lot of damage. Jump. This is kind of like Murky's Bomb. It'll get you out of any situation. You can just go right over roots. You're completely invincible during that. And it's just like the ultimate escape. And of course, Norse Force, very late level talent, but it's a lot of shielding, very long cooldown, a full minute cooldown. But that's why we grab the Impatience as Virtue, because just watch these cooldowns. With the 3 of them collectively attacking, it does all. I mean, that cooldown's gone down so quick. And last but not least, well, they have their sprint, so they have no mount. And you can see the speed difference of Eric. And they have the longbow rate. This song is so good. You really can't dislike the Vikings strictly because of how good this song is. And it hits hard. Strictly auto attack. It finds its own targets. And then the Q, it's a mortar. Target located, dealing 37 damage in a large area. So that hits like a truck. Again, that's pretty hard to nail down. But if you have in a team fight where you have people locked down, you can throw that in the middle and just do a ton of damage. Let's reset them, though. This is the other option that I want to see tried out, and we still really haven't seen it used to any good success. So we're going to go for Viking Horde level 1. We got to do the level up again. Slowly, we're getting there. 16, all right. So, all right, let's look at the talents here. You can get this knockback. That's pretty cool. Spin to win. That's a lot to give away. But, all right, let's get this knockback. This talent, I don't actually know if any of these are worth grabbing to be weird. I think jump is almost too crucial. So we're just going to stick with jump. We're going to go for the longboat. We're going to go for the hunk of burn and Olaf. And then we have this stun. So suddenly, they're more utility. We only have one ability, though. There's no Q. There's no E. We can never get those now because we've gone into that. And it's a melee knockback. Listen, look at that. That's huge. That's huge. Come back, Arthas. Please? Please? Now, it only does that. How frequently? Every 6 seconds. So, in theory, we've got the stun. I don't know if he did his stun or not. I can't even tell. But this is kind of like having a concussive blast out of hammer. And then you got this to get away. So that's like the amount of positioning and stuff you can get done with that, and that's a level 4 talent. So the amount, like, this is the fast guy. You can use Z to mount. You can really get in front of people. It's kind of like boosting with hammer and then knock them out. Problem being, very small health pool. That's why we have the W. That's why we have the jump. To just you know, be like, oh shit, we need to get out of this situation. This guy, you throw him the stun in there, maybe they can allow you to get more setups. And that's 2 interrupts you're throwing on your Vikings to disrupt things in fights. The only thing is it's not as like intuitive, it's not as guaranteed as casting a spell. This is a 6-second cooldown, so you have to make sure it's ready, and you have to make sure you get into melee range. So he's not going to use it, so you can kind of save it until somebody gets right in front of you, and then he's going to smack them back. So it's a cool thing that I've actually never seen in any match tried out. So step it up, guys. Try out this stuff. I want you guys to fool around with this shit and play with it, and like, send me your VODs. Send me your VODs. I want to see this stuff. So, without further ado, we are now going to load up the replay with Lost Vikings, played by Bellamorte. This was... I'm going to ruin the names. This was 8 p.m. Let me confirm before I say the wrong teams. Cast so many games lately that I am going to bungle the teams here and there. This was 8 p.m. versus Beyond Reason. So this was a tournament match from Saturday's Kings of the Storm. We're booting that on up, and we will fast forward to get into the action. Now, this is the first time we've ever seen the Lost Vikings played in a competitive match. And their dance is so good, even in slow motion. It's beautiful. And just looking at the talents, we can see he did go for the Viking Horde level 1. Now, before we resume, let's just take into the fact that Vikings can be played 2 ways. You can separate them and try to be like this micro boss that throws them all over the map, and you try to make sure you can collect experience everywhere. You have Eric sitting in one lane, you know, whatever. If you want to try to be a god, you can do this, but then not only are you working incredibly hard to control 3 characters against 5 enemies, sure, you have 4 other allies, but I don't know how often this ends up panning out as being good. And Bellamorte, we see here, is just going to take all 3 of them. He's treating them like one character, and he's going to utilize their kit as one character, just with the ability to micro them around, you know, spread them out, and maximize his efficiency by doing so. We'll just kind of watch this game pan out for a little bit. It's going to be Protojace playing Illidan here in the top lane, and this is going to be the duo. Now, Illidan is a hero that has a lot of self-healing, and he has a lot of damage as well, and he's probably the most mobile hero in the entire game. And when I say probably, I mean he definitely is the most mobile hero. He actually loves chasing people. So this is kind of cool. We're seeing the tank in the front. This is like the standard formation you might expect. And he's just kind of microing them individually. And again, you can do that by selecting him and then clicking that way. You want to select him, click him that way. Individual target units, you ever played StarCraft 2, it works exactly like that. And the game's just, it has a bit of a slow start. So we've got them farming their lanes in the middle. There's a lot of scuffling around. The hook goes out. Yada, yada, yada. Vikings. Here's the cool thing. He sends Eric, the scout, to cap that, and he keeps Illidan busy here. He's making sure he's pushing this lane and soaking this lane, and yet they have this tower. And it's going to be hard for Illidan to sneak by because he can easily walk around and potentially body block up in these close areas. So I really like the idea of Vikings on this map. Now, in competitive, you know what map you're playing on. You're able to say, all right, well, we want to play this here on this map. And there's other implications in other maps. For example, collecting lots of skulls when you go in the mines, or only sending one Viking to the mines and soaking top and bottom lane while your whole team's in the mines. There's a lot of cool things that can be done, but here on Dragonshire, this is kind of the style. Hold this top lane and keep pushing, and he's kept this lane pushed in his favor the entire time against Illidan. Now, there are other matchups that this would be near impossible with. If Sergeant Hammer just sieges up, it's really hard for the Vikings to get into that because of their health pool being so low. Let's just compare their health pool. All right, so we're looking at Eric, 630 health. Illidan has 1250. The big fat dude, he's got almost as much health as Illidan, so he's the tank. He's got almost as much as Illidan, who has very little health. And Balog, 900. Just to compare, Stitches, 2100. This tank dude, 1170. So Stitches got twice the health as this guy, the tankiest of the Vikings. But collectively, they have quite a bit of health. That's the problem with something like Illidan, Zeratul, or even a Nova that can blow someone up very quickly. Their health pool being quite low doesn't really pan out that well when you're trying to march into siege mode. Trying to walk up and a stealth Nova just blows up Eric. And Lily got wrecked, but You know, this has been working out. This matchup, in particular, has been working out very well. There's no heroes on the enemy team that provide that terrifying threat that they have to worry about, which is why Lost Vikings were the last pick in the draft. Very much, they knew, hey, look, we can make this happen based on their hero pool. Let's do it. A spin to win, doing a sizable amount of damage, and Balog gets out. So the game just continuing to push forward. They have not lost that top shrine once because they always have these two Vikings. This guy's just sitting in the back. He tapped the well, but he's got that Viking hoarder. They keep picking up these globes, and that's increasing their regen rate. And there's the jump we saw used level 7 talent. So the game will progress, and the game will, once you start to hit level 10, teams get a little bit more aggressive. They try to take the team fights. They try to capture the Dragon Knight. Illidan is finally turning that shrine over, but he's going to send just Eric up to recap that once again and just stay in the lane, pushing. These towers have no ammo. The push continues, using that jump, and he's going to micro Eric back down as the tower has now been capped. So what are we seeing at this point? Well, it's just passivity. It's just normal soak your lane. This is kind of like the top lane in a competitive match where it's tank v tank. Not a lot happening other than the two tanks butting heads, but he's managing to get that push versus the Illidan. And we are rapidly approaching level 10, so we're actually just going to fast forward to 210 where we should see some more aggression happening. The rest of the map we can see there's quite a bit happening. And they're just going to tap that well. Running back and forth. And now we have level 10. So let's just look at both teams' abilities. We have the hammer on our side, so we have that napalm strike. That's something that's going to lend well with the Vikings. You have this hammer that sieges up, and then you get in to the longboat, and suddenly it's like kind of having two sieges. So you have the siege coming from the boat, you have the siege coming from the hammer, and then you have the lockdown provided by both Reign of Vengeance, the dance out of ETC, and of course the healing jugs to try to keep everyone alive. Looking at the flip side, though, they have to worry about Maw. Maw can grab all three Vikings if they're clumped up. The Metamorphosis on Illidan gains health based on the number of targets it hits. So, again, 200 damage to an area. Illidan gains 100 temporary max health based on each hero he hits. Well, each Viking counts as a hero. So that kind of does well against him. Divine Storm, AoE lockdown, and looks like these guys have not selected their talents. Come on, dudes. You can do it. Putrid Bile and Tranquility. So Putrid Bile also very good against the Vikings, who are apparently using the longboat, and we're going to check that out. I'm actually curious why he uses. Does he think he can get a kill? Now the Vikings, in order to use their longboat, they all must be in close proximity. So a lot of damage going down. No, he's going to use it for that second health bar, because this does pull them all into a boat, which has a new health bar. It has more health based on the number of Vikings that are in the boat, but they all must be present. So if one of your Vikings is dead, you can still use it. It's just going to have less health. And it does not really, they don't really heal up too much while they're inside. So he's going to be careful with his Balog and back out. Now, the bottom lane's getting pushed, but we care about Lost Vikings. We don't care about these guys. They can do what they want. We've seen them playing tons of games. Well, maybe not lately, but again, that's Lily. We don't want to watch Lily. Not today, at least. We want to watch Vikings, and here they are pushing out, making sure they recap this top lane, and they have rejoined. So we're starting to approach level 13. I swear the team fights are interesting. I know this has been very methodical at this point. Oh, the sprint, the jump, so slippery. Gets away by the skin of his teeth, but Illidan equally slippery, so no one's gonna die. Now we have this hunk of burning Olaf, which is gonna make their damage go up pretty significantly. If we take a look at the damage at this point in the game, Vikings have just kind of been doing their thing, but they've been fighting the Illidan. Number 2 on their team, a Bump Sergeant Hammer. They do a sizable amount of damage, and with this hunk of burning Olaf, it seems to add a decent amount. And, of course, the Viking longboat is really where they shine. So they're pushing in. And they're not going to be contested. Counter push from the blue team. The red team's going to win. These Vikings, they have a sizable amount of siege. They have a sizable amount of just normal damage. And here's a big engagement. So the Vikings immediately... I'm actually just going to pre-posture for this so we can actually fully analyze this fight before everything goes down. So we see Kiefer's did want to throw the dance down. We see the Viking longbow was used very early. And... Seeking. So the Vikings are coming down to the middle lane. They're going to find... Illidan's just going to metamorphose immediately on them, but here comes the Rain of Vengeance, and as they get low, they pop that. So it's kind of like that Tekkas mentality. You throw down that second health bar, and you just unleash as much damage as possible. But all of this is going very poorly for them, as they have very little around them. The Vikings doing a lot of damage, not going to be able to pick up a kill until Hammer throws down that napalm. But ultimately, they did a good amount of damage with the Viking longbow. So they came into the fight. The fight was already pretty much lost because of how poorly the team as a whole initiated it. And yeah, they traded 1 for 2, but it still was pretty poor because the blue team is going to continue sieging on up. Rotating down with Eric like this, and I don't think that's the pathing he intended. Eric is going to end up getting out either way. That's the power of jump. That's the power of their sprint instead of having him out. He has such a small health pool. I mean, we can continuously look at that. His health pool, 1260. Stitches, 440. Zagara, 2700. Zagara has well over double his health. And actually, let's just look at Vala. She still has 1,000 more health than Eric, because he is very, very weak in that regard. And just nice zoning to make sure they pick up those guys. Let's move forward to another fight. Vikings continuing to roam as 3 most of the time. This is the first time we've really seen them separate. So we can actually see right here. This is the cool thing. This is where Vikings get really interesting. We have Olaf in the middle lane while the rest of the team is pushing here. So the Vikings have been kept together the entire time. They've been moving all 3 of them together. And here they finally take this fight in the bottom lane. Well, they rotate. They kept Olaf back. And we're actually just going to double check that. Pretty sure he was out of their vision for pretty much the entire duration of that fight. Well, he's in their vision now. Can we go back further? Yes. I think that, yeah, we can actually look at their vision. So here they are. They have complete vision of him right now. They're setting up for this fight, so they do have vision. So this was a mistake on their part. And they do have vision. They do have vision of all of this. These guys are actually not being microed properly. But Olaf in the middle lane is going to get a Dragonite for free because they managed to push them off that. That's kind of huge. Now this Maw picking up 2 Vikings. Vala is very low right now. Gets the heals. Excuse me, that wasn't the Vikings. That was Kiefer's, who is now dancing, and the Vikings are down here. But the Dragonite is marching in, so they're able to still control Balog and Eric while this Viking is in the Dragonite. So he's microing all 3 of these individually. They have Olaf in the Dragonite, and these other 2 are just kind of pushing in and doing the damage they can. What we could see is split, and looks like he's considering doing that. They could soak the other lanes, which is always good to do. But this is like the cool thing. You can use Vikings to take that map mechanic and still have other units. Now, again, the micro could be more impressive here. That's beyond the point. It's just the utility and the capability that they have on these kind of maps. This applies to the Garden Terror. You can run back, grab the Garden Terror, and do some really cool things. Olaf trying to sprint out of here, but oh, the jump over the roots, the hook, and I think he's going to die here. Yeah, he's real. But the other Vikings are still good and well and running around the middle of the map. Just kind of doing Viking things, helping their team. They're scared without their big beefy friend to tank for them. They're going to find some things to kill. Yeah, take care of these bruisers. Viking bros just kind of splitting up. Eric all by himself. He's afraid. He's afraid. He's afraid. This is dizzying because it's too fast. Slowing things down here in the bottom lane. Olaf is finally back, and we have all 3 Vikings. The shrines are still down, so there's no Dragonite to take, but they are once again grouping up to push on in. Viking Horde. They're going to be looking for it. When does he opt to use it? The hammer has the upper siege. There goes the strafe, and that's when he decides to siege on up into his boat, moving forward, throwing down that big attack, but he gets focused on very quickly and loses the longbow. 2 Vikings caught in that maw. The dance picking up 3 targets, but they don't have the longbow for it. That's what they needed to maximize and capitalize on, is that dance. So they have a lot of utility, but they're very slow, and they can be botted blocked very easily while in the longbow. So not the best use there. Could have been really cool. Could have been really powerful when you pair that with the other, heroics that you have available on your team. But It ends up being a fine situation where they don't really lose anyone. They only kill Illidan, but it could have been like a lot bigger of a push, in my opinion. Now, this is interesting because he has Viking Horde. They don't have mana, so these guys actually heal up really quick. So he opted to Hearth back. I guess he's got nothing better to do on the map, as there's really only the shrines and these bruisers to contest. But go contest the shrines, man! Like, just go contest the shrines with all 3 Vikings. And because this bottom shrine is completely empty right now, and we are going to have a bit of an engagement here in the top of the map. Vikings slowly making their way back. They don't have their mounts. They can't sprint, but you kind of want to save that, much like when you play Sergeant Hammer. The Rain of Vengeance doing nicely with the zoning, and they're actually sprinting into battle. Where's their opportunity, though? What are they looking for? They're in the back line. They're in the back line. The boat should be ready. And they're just going to use it as a second health bar, so they go in. And there goes the boat, finally. Gonna pick up a kill here on Uther. The thing hits so hard, just skirting by the roots. And actually, he's gonna... No, he is not gonna get that kill on Hammer. So it's just kind of like... It's almost like a modern-day Odin in some ways. Let's keep going. They're dancing in place. Not a whole lot to do right now. Again, another weird Hearth. We saw Eric just Hearth back at like 70% health. Kind of strange. Both teams have respawned, reposturing, looking for that engagement. And let's take this time and just kind of go over the talents. This is the style that we kind of expected. We talked about this. This is what we saw over the weekend. It's the Viking Horde. It's a spin to win, strictly picking up the ability. So spin to win, jump, and then you have the longboat raid. That's kind of where their damage comes out. We do have the Hunka burning Olaf. That's where you can get Impatience as virtue also, in my opinion. Not really, again, this is all very... A lot of this is theoretical because Vikings are so underplayed when it comes to competitive matches and even just ranked in general. And then North's Forest, the 1 minute cooldown, that you get 100 to 200 shield. So depending on how many Vikings are alive, lasts 7 seconds. So that scales... I actually don't even know. Do you get more shields if they're dead? I assume that's how it works. Shame on me for not knowing that. But that's what we're seeing here out of the style. Pretty much standard stuff, grabbing those abilities. We can see the teams are pinging both the middle and that top shrine, waiting for a party bush. The teams are going to meet in just a minute, and we're going to see if they wait and if they can maximize... Now, that's... The Q is a 12-second cooldown. He did that to clean up the creeps with an imminent fight happening. It's good to get rid of their vision, though, so I think it's a smart call. And the Hammer is sieged up with Hover Siege. Metamorphosis and Maw go down. So that's 2 heroics that they don't have to worry about. They're all pretty healthy. And there go the Jugs with the Rain of Vengeance. And look at this Longbow. Longbow is just going to town right now. They're being danced. He doesn't even have to move. He's doing so much damage. Like, ridiculous amounts of damage. I know no one's died, but it's still getting incredible amounts of efficiency. They're damaging. They're trying to blow up Illidan. And as they do that, the Dragon Knight is available for them. So... what do they opt to do? Okay, Olaf going to go off on his own. He is going to cap the Dragon Knight. Now they have this Dragon Knight and still 2 Vikings that are able to push in. So they're really pressing their advantage here with these Vikings, moving on forward. And this is a 16, 17-minute Dragon Knight, so it hits very hard. 5v4. This is looking very good, and I like this call. I like this call. You have this big push. You're controlling the Dragon Knight there. Just throw them in the top lane and have them A-move. Just A-move to the top lane, and they're going to push. As long as you have eyes on these 4, you know they're safe, and all 4 of them are here. So you have literally nothing to worry about, as long as you don't walk into the towers and kill them, and that's terrible if you do that. So Dragon Knight smacking on this door, pushing on in. And those Vikings continue to get that soak. So during all this, and because of all this, they're able to hit level 20. They lose the Dragon Knight, bring those Vikings back down. Looks like they're rotating them back down. Yep, doing that. Have that level 20. We have the longboat raid available once again in just about 5 seconds. Yep, 5 seconds from now. And now it has the upgraded. So 20 to 19, huge advantage. Kiefer's knocking back, keeping the zone. 5v5. We're just waiting for that longboat. Do they opt to continue with this pressure? And yeah, they're just going to keep pushing in. Hammer's going to siege up here. And once the enemy team commits in, that's when we would likely see a longboat in that maw. Should signal some aggression. Putrid Bile going around. Oh no, catching them all so off guard. I don't even know if Jugs can keep them alive at this point in time. Tab's getting very low. The healing ward trying to keep him alive, but this longboat is going to town. The dance is interrupted, but you're not going to be able to kill a Malfurion through his tranquility, even with the power of a level 20 longbow. Malf does end up dying in the backside there to the Vala and Keepers. And you know what? They took a 3 for none. Push in. Now they're going to try to end the game. Spoilers. They fail miserably. We saw this game this weekend. They push in. They use this to try to juke the Banelings. Bit of a misplay. Stitches with a nice hook. And I don't know what I'm watching. Like, they're just all really low. If they step back, heal up from Lily for 2 seconds, they're okay. But they bungle this. And ripperoni and cheese. They push in too hard. They fail. And ultimately, they lose the game. Lost Vikings were kicking ass. Lost Vikings were doing a lot of cool things. The amount of damage you get just from the boat alone creates a lot of utility. I like this style where we're just seeing all 3 Vikings in one lane, prioritizing them, that push, and making sure that you can micro them individually, you know, run one away when you have to. Just keep them together. Use jump to get that one out, and then just stay in lane. You never have to leave your lane. You're always continuously soaking. I mean, if we just look at the stats in this game, we can see that Vikings have the highest hero damage. They don't have the highest soak because Hammer's ridiculous, or that's siege, excuse me. They don't have the highest siege because Hammer's ridiculous. This doesn't show experience. This must be another tab. I have to figure that out. But their hero damage, they're outpacing both a Vala and a Hammer, so they obviously have the capability to dish out a ton of damage. Tab 3, that's APM. Viking APM is lower than ETC APM. Step it up, Vikings. There's 3 of you. And total experience here, we actually see it's actually kind of bugged, but Vikings are still behind Hammer. But it's up there. I mean, and he was staying in one lane, so if in theory experience could be a lot higher if you did spread them out between 3 lanes, but that's not the style we're seeing. We're seeing the singular Viking pack up on the top lane most of the game, playing it like a normal hero. Just pushing, waiting for 10, getting your longbow, and then fighting those engagements when it actually happens. And as long as you don't get blown up, I mean, this is, again, I can't really compare it. I can keep comparing it to the Odin as many times as I want, but it's kind of like that, where you get low with one Viking and then you pop that Odin. You pop that Odin, suddenly you have a ton of damage. You just kind of float around forward and you cast that Q trying to lock people down. It's a bit reliant on open spaces because the longboat does get body blocked really easily, and its pathing ends up being incredibly awkward because it's fat. It's very fat. And 2, relies on having a bit of lockdown. So let's think about lockdown. Okay, well, ETC's dance, that's cool. Thrall's kind of bad right now, but something like Earthquake would be really good. Something that has a lot of slow. Maybe just Jaina in general. You throw Blizzard down, you got people that are slowed for 6 seconds if you get the increased time on the chill, and this longboat's going to get ridiculous amounts of work done because kind of needs the extra helping hand to do that damage. And if it's super far in the front line when you cast it, they can blow it up very quickly because its health pool is not very high. So still really cool to see Vikings used in a competitive match relatively well. Like, yes, mistakes were made. Yes, there were things that could have been done better. That can be said about almost every player in this game here. But I can't really fault them for that. But it was really refreshing and really cool to see, and I'll tell you, Kubi and I were super, super hyped about this game. Now, in general, I would like to see more experimenting done with the Lost Vikings. I would like to see what people can create and do with those different kind of talents, because this seems to be the one play style that we're going to see. And again, maybe the Burning Hunk Olaf switched with Impatience is Virtue. But some cool stuff, and I gotta give props to Bellamorte. I believe that was his name, as I ruin everything. Yes, Bellamorte for his games here, and just showing us some good Lost Vikings action. Do I think that Lost Vikings will become a common thing in competitive heroes? Probably not. But I think they're in an interesting spot to the point where they're a cool hero. I don't think they really need to be changed a lot. I just think they're in a cool place, and I'm very excited to see more and more of them. One thing that might be interesting, but almost too good, is if they had other ability options. So the fact that you have to spec into QWE, what if they had two E's? What if they had two W's on the same tier? Like, what if, maybe that would be cool, but maybe that would be too good too, because I think it's a little weird to not have any abilities. Even if you're just microing three guys, it's kind of, then it becomes playing StarCraft really, and all you have is like, oh, I can stim my Marines, yay, that's my ability, or I can cast Storm with my Templar, yay. But that would be something neat that could happen. But in the current state, yes, they just have the single QWE, and it seems like you have to spec into all three. But Lost Vikings are a fun, pretty cool hero, and I'm excited to see more of them. And I think that's going to do it for this daily quest, as we are going to get ready to play some Hero League. But closing thoughts is, tomorrow we're looking at DPS Lily videos. I've got a few replays. I'd like more. So if you want to try the DPS Lily challenge for our Wednesday daily quest, please send me replays to solidjigg@gmail.com. I think I have this set up. Yes, submit your replays to solidjigg@gg.com. Include who you are, your name in the game, and what you did. Was it Hero League? I want to know as much info as you want to tell me. Tell me how the draft went. I was first pick damage Lily. Whatever. As much information as you remember or would like to provide in the video for that. Because it's going to be fun to just see what people can do with those water dragons. And we got Oni Yui saying, Mr. J. Pickles only specs into the E in his Vikings, and he gets good mileage out of it. I'd like to see that. I'd actually really like to take a look at those replays. So maybe Mr. J. Pickles can send me a replay of Vikings so I can analyze that and get a better feel for that. But the whole point of this show is just kind of like almost take myself and take you guys into the game and like just theory craft a little bit more about things that we're not really seeing a lot of. And that's kind of why I wanted to look at the Vikings today, because we're not seeing a lot of them. Starting to see more Diablo, that's cool. And I've received a plentiful number of Murky replays, so you can bet your ass we're going to look at Murky and competitive very soon. Well, on that note, guys, gonna get ready to play some Hero League. We're on our quest to rank 1. We are almost rank 5. And thank you guys for tuning in to Daily Quest number 4. Number 5 tomorrow, talking about Damage Lily, so we'll see you then.